Alright, time to go over all of the exotic armor available for Warlocks. Each exotic will be rated on a scale of 1 to 10 in both PvE and PvP. A rating of 1 means it satisfies the very basic requirements of an exotic, and that it's an exotic. Original Dreg's Promise or Astrocyte Verse is a good example of this. However, aside from that, it will offer nothing over a legendary piece of armor. A rating of 5 is considered a normal exotic that has some benefits, but not a lot of real upsides. Invective and Lord of Wolves are good examples of this. Maybe a small bit of utility as well. A rating of 9 is going to be a very powerful exotic that generally every player will benefit from. Hawkmoon in its original state is one of these. A rating of 10 is effectively considered overpowered, in that not only does it benefit any player, but it blatantly makes some abilities better without any other effort from the player. A good example of that would be Thorn or Vex Mythoclast in their most powerful states. With that explanation out of the way, let's get started with the Helms. Skull of Dire Ahamkara. 4 out of 10 in PvE, 4 out of 10 in PvP. This helm used to be a pretty integral part of an energy drain build, however Ophidian Aspects and a few other exotics kind of brought it down in the rankings. The reduced damage while you use Nova Bomb feature just doesn't really come into play enough either, especially since you already have such a significant damage reduction naturally. Still, it looks cool. Apotheosis Veil. 7 out of 10 in PvE, 7 out of 10 in PvP. This is one of those exotics that adds an extra bit of utility to any spec. Being able to have an instant regen button for health and abilities can come in clutch in both PvE and PvP. Other exotics may be better to up your neutral game, but this is still undeniably useful in just about any situation involving a super. Light Beyond Nemesis. 5 out of 10 in PvE, 5 out of 10 in PvP. This is the best example of a baseline good exotic. The decreased time on revives is always handy if you need it, and any group will welcome increased orb production. Obsidian Mind. 8 out of 10 in PvE, 2 out of 10 in PvP. This is one of those helms that just makes Warlock stupid fun in PvE. Combining it with another weapon that increases super regeneration can make for some crazy short cooldowns between your Nova Bomb, which means even more orbs for your team. This is usually a great helm for running strikes and select fights in the raid. The Ram. 6 out of 10 PvE, 9 out of 10 for PvP. Voidwalkers are just stacked with some solid choices for exotics. While this helm doesn't have a lot of utility in PvE aside from on-demand healing on any melee, it's still one of the top exotics for PvP. The armor increase allows a Warlock to hit max armor and survive a lot of situations they normally wouldn't based on health alone. Plus, that heal can make you win just about every close melee fight. The Stag. 2 out of 10 in PvE, 3 out of 10 in PvP. The supercharge is interesting, but it happens so infrequently that it just doesn't play into most matches. The overshield can be handy, but again it's so infrequent that it just isn't worth the exotic slot. It does look pretty cool though. Astrocyte Verse. 1 out of 10 in PvE, 1 out of 10 in PvP. It doesn't do anything. The perk is actually broken. It doesn't do anything. It does look cool though. Moving on over to the gloves, we have these Sunbreakers. 7 out of 10 in PvE, 7 out of 10 in PvP. These have always been one of the consistently good exotics for Sunsingers. I'm probably rating them a little bit high, but they take solar grenades from okay to absolutely stellar in some builds and playlists. They don't work in every situation, but they are still strong. Claws of Ahamkara. 6 out of 10 in PvE, 8 out of 10 in PvP. While double melee charges isn't amazing in PvE, it's still good for some energy drain builds if you don't want to use the Fellwinter artifact. These are definitely strongest in the hands of a Stormcaller in PvP though, since their ranged melee attack is one of the strongest abilities in PvP. Nothing Manacles. 7 out of 10 PvE, 8 out of 10 PvP. Scatter grenades have always been a high source of damage but lacked consistency. Well, these gloves just remove that and also give you an extra grenade. Still, they are one of the best choices for a PvP Warlock and good for some builds in PvE. The Impossible Machines. 5 out of 10 in PvE, 4 out of 10 in PvP. Having landfall is cool, but is it really that good? Wouldn't you much rather have 2 charges of your melee as a Stormcaller or Ophidian Aspects to improve your neutral gameplay? Speaking of those, Ophidian Aspects. 8 out of 10 in PvE, 10 out of 10 in PvP. Look, these gloves are probably the most powerful exotic introduced to the game in a very, very long time. Quick draw and increased reload speed on every single weapon is good. The added benefit of improved energy drain for Voidwalkers is just icing on the cake as far as I'm concerned. Plus, you can have access to increased melee attack speed and increased grenade throw distance. These gauntlets are simply stacked to the brim with perks. Moving over to the chess pieces, we have Heart of the Praxic Fire, 6 out of 10 in PvE, 6 out of 10 in PvP. Sunsinger in both PvP and PvE is kind of lacking, but this does allow you to get more use out of your Viking Funeral ability when Radiance is active. It's not the best choice for Sunsinger specific exotics, but then again the pool isn't that great anyway. Voidfang Vestments, 4 out of 10 in PvE, 6 out of 10 in PvP. The extra Seeker on Axion Bolt is nice in some situations, and spawning with grenade energy will always be useful in PvP, especially since that part of the perk always works on any spec and grenade. Starfire Protocol, 3 out of 10 in PvE, 3 out of 10 in PvP. If you really want 2 fusion grenade charges, use the Fellwinter artifact and then use another exotic. The only real upside to this chest piece is the extra ammo for special weapons. Purifier Robes, 3 out of 10 in PvE, 4 out of 10 in PvP. I've always thought these have some interesting possible utility, but it is just too narrow to actually see much use. It requires that you die, be a Sunsinger with self-res, and actually have enemies in close proximity before you see any use out of it. At the very least, Bungie should consider buffing it to give you Touch of Flame or Viking Funeral to up your neutral game. Alchemist's Raiment, 4 out of 10 PvE, 2 out of 10 PvP. These don't really have any PvP utility since you rarely hold onto your super for extended periods of time, unless you're using Tlaloc. I can see some benefit in PvE, but again, I'd just much rather have my super and have those orbs go to charging my super, instead of wasting them on my melee and grenade, which charges quickly as is. Plus the glimmer gain is laughably low. Transversive Steps, 9 out of 10 PvE, 1 out of 10 PvP. These boots allow you to reload any weapon by running over an ammo brick. I know that sounds kind of niche, but it opens up a lot of rapid play in PvE since you always have your weapons ready to fire, not to mention that it's hilarious to continually fire weapons by running over bricks of ammo. This is one of those exotics that doesn't seem that amazing until you actually start to use it. Then you see how good they are. Also, moving faster while crouching only works when strafing, which is kind of weird. Also, don't use these in PvP. They don't do anything for you there. And that about does it for Warlock exotic tier listings. I hope you all found this video helpful, and please don't be too angry if I didn't rate your favorite exotic as high as you would have liked. This video is effectively my personal opinion, and you are very much free to disagree. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.